Oh, nervous.
Really?
No. Imagine like,
I've got nothing left.
you're like, so tell me about nutrition. I'm like,
I need some water. Hydration. Well, welcome to It's Just Genetics. There's only me this week. It's normally me and my brother. How are you, man?
oh mate, I'm bloody good. Privileged to be here.
I know. This is the new upcoming with the new Modern Wisdom.
Yeah.
Do you watch that? That would be.
I do, yeah. With Chris
Williamson, yeah.
Williamson, right? Yeah, he's. I used to watch it back in the first lockdown.
Was that when did he start? Was that
Well,
around?
that
then?
would have been 2020. So
Probably then.
yeah,
Man, it's mad to see how quickly. Well, it feels like they've quickly blown up, but things that were new that are huge now. People.
yeah.
Something I saw today actually, which is quite good on the nutrition topic. Have you seen the Stephen Bartlett kickback?
Oh, he's got so many. Which one is this?
No, the BBC have gone after him.
Oh,
Well, not the BBC. Well, I think
Juicy.
it was an investigation that he's. I think it was either every podcast or across the lot. There's been 15 bits of misinformation.
Really?
Because I don't know if did you ever listen to it?
I've listened to a few of them, and I kind of liked him at the start,
Yes.
but then because I felt like he was quite neutral in certain questioning, and it just got to a point where he was almost promoting certain things,
Everything.
which I just disagreed with, and it just kind of just ruined it for me a little
Yeah,
bit.
because they say he switched from it being about entrepreneurs and stuff to this weird sort of move towards wellness and health, which is
Yeah.
fine, but also not, because you're called Darryl of a CEO.
Yeah.
And there's like loads of misinformation, which we can get into today.
It's also kind of a case of like he's obviously looking for views and listens, right? So he's having to tackle controversial topics. But basically what's happened is he's bringing in people who are advocates for those controversial topics, and there's no counter argument. So people who maybe aren't as informed as someone who's in that industry is listening to it thinking, oh, wow, the kind of carnivore diet is maybe the way that I need to start eating. And then they end up losing out on so many nutrients, like no fiber and obviously no
Joy.
fruits and vegetables and joy and happiness. But yeah, so it is crazy.
It's a weird one, isn't it? So before I dive into all of that, tell me about, I know obviously who you are and what you do. Who are you?
My name's Darryl, obviously. So I'm a nutritionist who works specifically within Hyrox, but at the same time works across a number of different sports. I've been in the fitness and health industry since 2008, was a personal trainer. I was quite heavily competing in CrossFit, training 13 hours a week, competing
Wow, that's a lot.
like pretty much every month, pretty much. And I was kind of someone who saw myself as quite well educated in the nutrition field. I always really enjoyed it. I was quite well read, or so I thought at the time. And it got to about 2019. And as I said, I was kind of like an aspiring athlete, as you were, someone who was slightly fitter than the average person and had dreams of becoming a CrossFit pro athlete. Yeah, which I was nowhere near going to ever get there. But I kind of liked the idea of it. And I randomly did a nutrition diploma, just literally out of boredom. It was kind of like COVID times. And obviously during those times, you either learn something new or you become an alcoholic or a fitness freak. And I became the fitness freak, but I also decided to learn something new and basically did a nutrition diploma and realized that everything I was doing was completely wrong.
Wow.
It was crazy. At the time, I believed that carbs were going to make me fat. So I was pretty much having like 40 grams of carbs a day, which basically meant all I was having was basically fruits and vegetables. I wasn't having any rice, no pasta, no oats, because I wanted to stay lean. I was having relatively high fats and high protein. Did this diploma and realized that, well, actually I'm completely overtrained. I'm completely underfueled. And there's a reason why I feel shit all the time.
Yeah.
And then at that point, it was a bit of a weird place to be, because I was kind of like, wow, I've been in the industry for 10 years and I know nothing, even though I was someone who was going out there and trying to learn about nutrition. So I pretty much signed up for a sports master's degree on the spot, and basically did a sports master's degree, and I've been working the space ever since. And
that's a great story to lead into why you're doing
it's crazy.
what you're doing.
Yeah, it's mad. Do you know what's the craziest thing, which was a real kind of eye opener for me, was as I said, it was during COVID that I started to increase my carbohydrates, change my diet, and I genuinely saw my muscles looked fuller, I actually felt and looked leaner when I was looking in the mirror, and I was just like, what the hell? I've been basically cutting this thing out for, at this point, it'd been about 4 years.
Yeah.
And the moment I bring it back in, obviously my glycogen stores were refilling up. My muscles were retaining that glycogen as well because obviously they were starved. And all of a sudden I looked better. It was mental.
It's weird, isn't it? Because there's so much misinformation. I'm glad you sort of talked about thinking you understood everything, because to me that shows me you're the kind of person who is probably quite self-critical, but also very introspective and able to go, oh shit. Because I think a lot of people, and I fall into it when I'm in a bad mood, they will hear something that goes against what they have an opinion on, and they instantly dismiss it. And I used to do that all the time, particularly with diet, because I'm like, well, I'm in better shape than you, so why would what you're telling me be true? And since removing that mindset, you're like, oh shit, there's actually a lot to learn. And I think around diet and nutrition, there's so much bullshit out there.
So much. And even though I said, I've been in the industry for a long period of time, I've got a master's degree, I do a lot of research alongside the work I'm doing to try and stay up to date with the stuff that I'm kind of encouraging, because I don't want to be that person who falls behind times and then misses out on
and becomes that sort of
becomes
bitter,
that person. Exactly. But at the same time, even now, I'm still learning every day. Like it's like, even if you kind of put 30 years into a specific subject, you probably still only know like 10% of it.
Right.
There's so much information around so many different things. It's crazy.
I think that's the mindset you need to have if you want to be the best. Is I'm never at the top, or not. Well, that's probably the wrong way to phrase it, but always wanting to learn, because it's a bit, and also each human's different. Like each person has different reactions to different foods. I think that's the biggest thing that causes issues online. Is someone will see someone is doing really well on the carnivore diet, and they're like, no, everything else is bullshit. Fuck you. And you're like, well, or you were a greedy little fuck before, and this has tapered your calories down. Do you know what I mean? It's but something you just said, which I've completely lost my trail of thought on. This is great. This is the problem with doing an evening podcast. You're like, I heard him say something good
Friday.
There.
Brain is frazzled.
It's Friday. It's late. So we're good. What did you say? Oh, that was it. The comment on being underfueled and overtrained. That's something Dom and I, Dom, who's not here, we're talking about. Is I think lots of people in London are chronically overtrained and underfed, particularly around like the class mentality. You'll go and smash, I'm speaking from experience here, smash a 45-minute hour session flat out, and then because you've got the mindset of I want to stay lean, you won't refuel, and to refuel from that you need a lot. Like I'd say after a metabolic, for example, I would go for 600 calories just from chocolate milk to get that instant refresh. Plus then a meal quite quickly after, because otherwise you just feel flat all day. How do you see that a lot with your clients?
I would say 99% of people are overtrained and underfueled. I would say
That's mad.
Not like, obviously the people I work with, we work against that, and I'd like to think most of them, depending obviously where they are in their journey, that they're no longer in that state. But I would say 99% of people probably are overtrained, underfueled, just for so many different reasons. Obviously, if you look back to like the fitness industry as little as 5 years ago, all of the big kind of influencers were pushing the whole kind of like, I do all these challenges. I'll do a 24-hour run.
They're still doing it, aren't they?
It's still prevalent, but obviously a lot of people are now preaching the balanced approach as well.
The damage it can do.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas like 5 years ago, or maybe longer, that there wasn't really anyone promoting the balance. It was always like go hard or go home, 24-hour races, like 28-day row, like all these kind of stuff, which is crazy. Like, don't get me wrong, I think it's important to step out your comfort zone and challenge yourself. And maybe if you want to do that sort of challenge, like the Atlantic Row is something I would love to do.
That'd be cool.
It'd be amazing. And obviously that is something which technically our bodies shouldn't be able to do, but it's a one-off event. Whereas because obviously people jump online and they see all these people doing these crazy challenges every week, every day, it becomes the norm, right? And then when you couple it with all these other people who are talking about nutrition, and they're saying that carbs are the devil, fats are the devil, you need to stay away from this food, you need to do this, they become underfueled. And then when you put the two together, you end up creating a body which, our bodies are so resilient. Like when we get sick, we get better after a period of time. When we pull a muscle, it grows back. It obviously heals. So we got really resilient bodies, but ultimately that body can only last so long. And if you keep put under stress and under inflammation, eventually it is going to break down. And that's what I had 2 years ago. There was a period of time where it was crazy. It was something like 14 competitions in 16 weeks when I was heavily in CrossFit. And it was just a case because
Fucking hell.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was stupid. And that was around the time where I was in a bit of a bad place in terms of fitness. And I was the whole kind of, I need to train hard. I want to be an athlete, blah, blah, blah. And it was a running joke that I was going to come out injured. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll get injured, but it's fine. But in my head, I was thinking I'm bulletproof. I've never really had a proper injury before. And it just kind of happened. And then I spent 2 years catching up on all the injuries and the niggles because I put my body under so much stress that it basically broken down to the point where I'd basically sort one niggle out and then I'd randomly pull another muscle out of nowhere. And then I'd sort that injury out and then I'd hurt somewhere else. And it was just purely down to the fact that my body was under so much stress and I had so much inflammation that it just couldn't take anymore. And ultimately, that's what everyone is working towards unless they start focusing on their sleep, focusing on their nutrition, taking rest days. The amount of people I've spoken to and they don't take a rest day or they take one rest day a week.
They'll do a 20K long, easy pace run.
Yeah, like they'll do a zone 2 run on their rest day. And people wear it as a badge of honor. Like almost like, look at me, like I don't really rest because I don't need to because I'm this superior human being. But ultimately, the best performers are the best people who recover the best
resters, right?
Yeah. Like if you read any autobiography from some of the top athletes, like if you speak to like Matt Fraser released his book.
He's the CrossFit champion, isn't he?
Yeah, like obviously like the most successful CrossFit champion ever. And there's a bit in his book where he was like, I take my rest and my recovery as important and as seriously as my training. And he would literally like on his rest days, he would literally eat loads of food,
just fuck all,
barely move. And that was non-negotiable, and it was crazy.
That's really interesting because I think it's almost as if. So to go back to your point on sort of having that almost delusion that you could be a top athlete, I completely agree with you. I think it's important to have this. I think in anything you do, this we'll call it delusion, but this belief that you can get to the top. Because I have the same thing in anything I do. It's almost an internal arrogance that I'm going to do that, and what ends up happening is even if you don't get to the top of your game, you get pretty bloody good. Hyrox, for example, I know you're a weapon at that as well. The sort of delusion that I looked at it and was like, yeah, sub-hour, first one. Heavily shocked when I didn't. I got 1 hour 15, but because I've been like, I can be as good as these guys, I've got to 105. Next time will be 103, then it'll be an hour. And I think that's same as what you're saying. But it's in that quest, I think you're right. There's a time where you'll go, I need to rest now. It's important that my body gets recovery, but you'll go, but I need to be the best. I need to get to the top. And I think do you agree that might have been because there wasn't transparency from these people at the top saying, hey, listen, we're either on PEDs or we rest, we recover properly?
Yeah, I just think just in general, sleeping 9 hours a night is not as sexy as going out and smashing out a squat PB
I love it.
or running. Yeah, man, sleep is my favorite thing.
It's the best, isn't it? It's so good.
But yeah, like I think it's just not as marketable as like running a sub 25K and these kind of things. Like nobody wakes up one morning and says, oh, I just got 9.5 hours sleep and gets high fives for it. But if I went and ran a 60-minute 5K, people would be liking my stories.
And you get that validation thrown at you, don't you?
That's the thing. And that's the biggest problem is, you're right, that people, like the top athletes probably don't speak about it enough around that recovery and the rest. And I think maybe that's partly due to they don't open their week up as much as they possibly
It's not sexy, is it? You're right. It's not like, hey guys, I slept 9 hours.
Yeah, but also some top athletes don't want to give away their tricks, right? If you're competing and you're trying to be the best in the world, you're not going to go around saying, oh, this is my training regime, this is my recovery, because ultimately your competitors might then see that and then they can kind of take some of your methods away potentially. I don't know. I'm kind of just making assumptions here, but it's certainly not sexy.
I think also I was talking to, Jake Williamson, the Hyrox athlete. So met up with him the other day and was just asking him, what is your day today? And he lives in Birmingham. And he was like, Well, there's not really any Hyrox athletes there, so I'll go to the gym, sort of do my workout, and then he does sort of 1 to 2 hours. I mean, he's in there a while, but off the rehab stuff. Then he'll go home, nap, eat, and then go back to the gym. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like a proper athlete's daytime. Like, you don't really do much. You train, you eat, you rest, you repeat.
Yeah.
And he's got the world record, I think, for his age group.
Yeah. Is it the relay or?
Oh, I don't know, but he's rapid.
He's good. He is good.
And the same with Hunter. I was talking to George, George, and he was saying, yeah, he does pretty much fuck all in between his crazy bouts.
Yeah.
In terms of nutrition, is there, obviously fueling correctly, is there anything you've noticed that's been particularly effective outside of sleep? Because we all know, I don't know if we do all know, but sleep obviously is the key. If you're not doing that, you're fucked. It's like the core. Is there anything else you found that's been particularly useful? Because supplements will say, oh, recovery's increased. It's like, is it?
Supplements are good, but I think the key's in the name, right? It's a supplement to your nutrition. Yeah. And I think I guess the thing that I see quite often that people do wrong is they use supplements as a way of like papering over cracks. They won't be eating 5 portions of fruit and veg. They won't be eating enough carbohydrates. They're probably in a deficit where they don't need to be. But then they'll start smashing loads of beta-alanine and creatine and electrolytes and that sort of thing. And they're like, they're seeing progress, because obviously we know that if you move more and you have a progressive training plan, there's a good chance you're going to get better. But ultimately, it gets to a point where those percentages become a lot slimmer, and that's where you need to start really honing in on your nutrition and your sleep and everything else. But in terms of from a nutrition standpoint, it's kind of like, without trying to bang the same drum all the time, but it's carbohydrates, it is fueling around training, it is hydration. A lot of people aren't drinking enough water, but then also they're probably not having enough sodium to their water, which is why I get a lot of people mentioning to me that they're cramping during their races.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And obviously sodium, your electrolyte status isn't necessarily the only reason your muscles cramp, but they are a large part of it.
Someone said the other day, I think it was, not important who, they were saying one of the things they found is why the electrolyte revolution's happening is because as we've got more health conscious, obviously sodium and salts have been taken out of foods, and actually some people who are healthier, quote unquote healthier, it's a very blanket statement, are not getting enough. It's not getting enough sodium anymore because of that, which I found really interesting. I was like, oh, yeah, it's a good point, because if you're constantly avoiding salts, if you're the average health conscious person, you're probably all right.
Yeah.
But do you remember growing up? It was like, you're having too much salt, you're going to die, heart attack.
Yeah.
It's like, well, actually, I'm an elite athlete, so
yeah, I'm going to win it one day.
I'm going to win that race.
Yeah, I think sodium is suffering a similar situation to carbohydrates in the sense that, as you said, growing up, everyone was like, "Oh, salt, stay away from that; it will kill you. You'll get a heart attack."
Yeah.
And unless you're having lots of like, kind of like pre-prepped foods, where you get like those like microwavable meals, and certain kind of like prep meal companies will obviously put a lot of sodium into their meals to make them taste better. Right. But the average person doesn't necessarily live on those. They might make their own food. But as you said, like a lot of people are scared to add a bit of salt to their meals for that reason.
I would very much avoid it. Well, I'll let you finish and then I'll go on to another point. But
yeah, I was kind of finishing up. But yeah, I was just kind of saying that like a lot of people kind of have been fed the whole, be careful of your salt and stuff like that. And ultimately what it's probably done is it's actually meant that they're probably having a little bit less, which the average diet is okay. Yeah. But then when you take into account a lot of people, and I'm talking specifically with Hyrox for a second, a lot of people are training like 8+ hours a week.
You sweat so much from the Hyrox workouts, man.
Yeah, and obviously we know that through your sweat, you obviously lose a lot of sodium. It's anything from like 200 milligrams to 2,000 milligrams. Nobody really knows how much they're losing sodium unless you go to like a lab and get it. I don't know. I think you can get done outside a lab, but you have specific tests which you can obviously test your sodium losses.
Interesting.
So then, ultimately you lose loads of sodiums, and a lot of the time, unless you're having electrolytes and stuff like that, then sometimes you're just not replacing it.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's interesting, because I remember reading Humantra's packets, and they were like, if you're an athlete, you want to have 3 of these a day, which was like 80 quid a month or something crazy.
They taste good though, don't
Oh,
they?
they're so good.
Yeah, they taste good.
Have you tried Hyrox? Or they're called Hero now? Hyrox Health, they switched to branding, but they have a sort of, they're like, I call them posh electrolytes because they've got like subtle flavours of like elderflower and oranges and watermelon. They're really nice. And what was the one I tried recently?
I take ESN. I do work with them, so it is.
Oh yeah, you're sponsored by them now.
Yeah, so I work with ESN, and I'm not saying it's because I work with them, but I generally do think they are amongst the best electrolytes on the market.
To try them.
Just because they have the right portion. Like I was taking ESN before they even reached out to me.
No, you were. I can back you on that. Yeah.
And they just have the right dosages of like your sodium and your potassium and stuff like that. So I personally take those, but yeah, Hyrox are also really good as well.
Interesting. What was the one I tried recently? I remember one being fucking delicious, but oh well. So to go back on something there, I think what I've noticed recently, which is really interesting, is how things you will have read or just been told by Jack at the corner shop or by some steroids monkey in a magazine, how they stick because you read them when you were younger and were like, that must be true. I'll give you an example. I remember, I think it was these, do you remember those two beefy twins who were on YouTube, the brothers? I don't know if you remember them. They'd be like, you want to build some muscle? That's good. That's real good.
I know the that's good one.
Yeah. And I think it was either he was saying the opposite or whatever, but I remember them talking about the 20-minute anaerobic window. So after workout, there's apparently a 20-minute aerobic window.
Yeah.
And I would literally bang out the shake it around within minutes, being like, whew, I'm glad I've not lost all my gains.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And everyone just believed it.
I know, it's mad, isn't it? If you have a loud enough voice and a decent enough platform, you could probably tell people that if you eat stones, then you'll lose 5 kilos of body fat.
Through death.
Through death, yeah. Terrible metaphor, but yeah, like, ultimately, that is the negative side of social media. Social media is great because it does allow you to reach people that you wouldn't normally be able to reach. And if you're spreading the right information, then you can educate people in a relatively efficient way. But obviously the negative side of that is if someone is spreading the wrong information.
Stephen, looking at you.
But yeah, like if you're spreading the wrong information and you've got a decent enough platform, and the problem with social media is the controversial stuff is more gets more views. Yeah. Like I could, if I started talking about the carnivore diet, I can almost guarantee that my following and my engagement would grow by like 100 times within the next 12 months. But I just don't stand by that sort of.
That's the thing. I think if you've seen like Bonnie Blue, this girl who's basically trying to shag as many dudes as possible in like whatever amount of time, it's clear. Well, I'm pretty certain this is the case, that she's leaning into the fact that it causes so much hatred, and the comments of people being like, "You're disgusting." That then drives her to making £700,000 a month, or something crazy. And you see it with a lot of people. They're playing characters, and they will deliberately put misinformation out there. If you look, do you know the carnivore guy? The guy's like, here's how to eat at the airport. There was one skit, I say skit, he's on like 240,000 followers. And you know it's because naive people are seeing his stuff because the comments are from the people who are hating. So the engagement's being driven. And he did one where he's like, carnivore diet at the airport. So if you head over to the lounge and I'll get my sandwiches and I'll take the cheese and ham out. And you're like, and all fun from your life. But he's got this huge following, and he has had to pull back recently because he was like, he came back with really bad markers of his blood, and then was like, so I'm trying to reintroduce dairy and something to his diet. But that's the thing. It then gives people, it's like this self-fulfilling loop, isn't it? Because you get people going, yeah, your advice worked wonders for me. And then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And there's just, it can almost be quite overwhelming to find, or to go, what is right. And I'll be honest, one of the reasons I wanted to get you on is because I've started a 16-week plan where I want to get as fit as possible, a little bit big muscle. I want to get fucking tank, but also get fitter for Hyrox and all these things, but do it all in. And I realised I knew actually fuck all about nutrition. I know the basics, like don't eat that, do eat this, sort of moderate that. And I was like, but actually, I don't think I could give you clear answers on things like hydration, micronutrients, macronutrients, what to do here and here. And I was like, well, this is where I can talk to you and actually get some knowledge, which we can then hopefully push out there to everyone else. Because the amount of reels you see where you're like, but I just watched one telling me that was what I was supposed to do. So yeah, I'm hoping you can demystify.
Yeah, absolutely.
So is there any, before we go into all the other stuff, are there any particular fads or myths that you've seen recently which you want to just go, that's bullshit, enough? I'm going to take this off.
Yeah, a couple. One which I get a lot of hate whenever I say this, but I do honestly believe this is like people taking beta-alanine or bicarbonate of soda as a nutrition product or supplement, for Hyrox. Like, don't get me wrong, bicarbonate of soda, beta-alanine are great supplements. The problem with using it for Hyrox is that beta-alanine, they do the same thing. So I'm going to talk about.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, they basically do the same thing. So ultimately, what they do is, as you exercise near maximal training, so we're talking predominantly any exercise up to about 3 minutes. So sprint training, 400-800 meter sort of stuff. If you're doing a CrossFit workout, if you was doing something like Fran, which is like thrusters and pull-ups, I think. Basically, as you do near maximal training, the muscles in your body become more acidic, hydrogen ions build up, lactic acid builds up. So what beta-alanine or bicarbonate of soda does is it acts as a buffer to slow that process down, because through that process your body involuntarily slows down, because it obviously does it as a defense mechanism to stop you from hurting yourself.
Yeah.
But the problem is, when it comes to aerobic exercise, even though you might be doing a Hyrox, you'll look at your heart rate and it will say, oh, I was at 80-90%, I was at zone 5 for this period of time, blah, blah, blah. That isn't the same as you doing a 400-meter sprint. It's not the same maximal training. Yes, your heart rate is near maximal, but your muscles technically aren't. If you could sprint for an hour, we'd all be faster than Usain Bolt. So it doesn't really do much. Like, I've looked at so many journals because I've had a lot of people message me and actually have a go at me about that viewpoint, to the point where I went and looked at like the national sports, the British Nutrition Sports Journal, where it literally talked about beta-alanine, and what they do is they obviously look at all the literature and come to their findings and basically summarize it all. And even they said like up maximum 20 minutes is where you can have any benefits, which obviously a Hyrox, if you're doing Hyrox in 20 minutes, then you're going to be a superstar. So that's one myth.
Hunter,
which
next record.
That's one myth which I feel like it doesn't do what people think it does. But the problem is, you have a lot of like really good athletes that do take it, and obviously then it filters down. The one caveat I would say to this, that the argument that some people come back to me is, well, if you're doing sprint-based training, it's going to help the sprint-based training, and then it might then help with your running and stuff like that, which you could potentially argue that, but it's going to be like a secondary benefit. And like, how many sprint training sessions are you doing as part of a 8-week plan? Like maybe once, twice a week. Is that really going to benefit your Hyrox performance? I don't know the answer to that one, but in terms of direct benefits, that is something which I don't think does anything.
It's interesting because I always used to, again, this is sort of me to a T. I would hear a piece of, this is this advice, or this is what this does, and not question it and go, that's just. So I just assumed beta-alanine didn't do anything, and it was just put into pre-workouts to give you the tingle effect and make you think you were. Yeah. And that's what I mean, and I just lived by that. So now I know.
Yeah, it is a great supplement. When you look at research and supplements, and you've got like, ultimately, sometimes there's insufficient research in a product, which then doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't do anything, but it's just not been heavily researched enough. Whereas there's a lot of products out there which have been heavily researched and have been shown to be bullshit. Like BCAAs, for example, are just
rubbish.
Complete crap, right?
Although, just on that, my brother and I will say, this may be placebo, but when I drink BCAAs, the muscle soreness the next day is way less.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Might be anecdotal, but
and that could be why things, because placebo is a real thing, isn't it? Like, we know your brain can cause knock-on effects when you believe something. But yeah, I've always noticed that. Sorry,
yeah,
to go back in.
Yeah. Well, like whenever BCAAs have been tested, when they've had like people taking BCAAs alongside people who are actually meeting their protein requirements, there's not really any difference.
Interesting.
But then when they've also tested BCAAs and leucine, so your BCAAs are 3 branch chain amino acids, you've got leucine, isoleucine, valine. Whenever they've done, this is more from a strength and hypertrophy, like muscle growth standpoint, whenever they've tested leucine against BCAAs, the results have been the same because it's essentially leucine that gives you those primary benefits. So technically you could save your money and just go for leucine, which I'm pretty sure is cheaper than BCAAs.
It's got to be, right?
Yeah, and then you're probably going to get the same benefits if you're looking to build muscle or get stronger.
What about EAAs, essential amino acids?
Same thing.
Same thing, yeah.
Like ultimately, they're the building blocks of protein. So if you're eating enough natural protein, which potentially might be absorbed better because it's obviously more natural.
Also true. And also, you're just drinking it with water, so there's nothing to bind it to.
Yeah, so like, potentially, you might find that having a chicken or, I don't know, plant-based proteins like chickpeas, lentils, that kind of thing, might even be absorbed better than a supplement anyways.
That's interesting. What about something I've had multiple comments on recently is gels in Hyrox. Now, I'm of the belief you don't need them, and I've had a lot of opinions, mostly runners, who go, no, you need a gel. And George is the one who sort of said this to me. It's not long enough for a gel to have an impact on the glycogen stores in the way that people think. Is that something you'd agree with?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think there is a caveat to that, which I'll go into in a second again.
Awesome.
That ultimately, like with your gels, the whole point of them is to replenish your glycogen stores as they start to get depleted, so you stop seeing a drop in performance. Whereas if you're fueled up properly leading up to the race, then you should be able to withstand an hour to an hour and a half of exercise. The only caveat to that would be if you've got a really early race and you're not like ultimately, so I weigh like 90-ish kilos. Like when I competed in my last Hyrox, I had about 450-ish grams of carbs, which some people go higher than that for their body weight, but I had roughly around that amount.
That's a fair amount, isn't it?
Yeah, but if you've got a race at say 9 a.m. and your body isn't used to or able to digest a lot of carbohydrates in one sitting, then potentially you could have a gel because you've not been able to fully like load up those energy stores. So for me, it's not the gel kind of argument for me isn't necessarily like one way or the other. I do think that as long as you're kind of like fueled up properly leading up to race, then you don't need the gel. But at the same time, if you're got a super early race, find it hard to eat due to race nerves or just find it hard to eat big portion size of carbohydrates, then potentially you could have a gel roughly around about the row, maybe just before it, to kind of like stop that drop off towards the end. But if you're able to fuel up properly, then it's not really long enough. Like a gel will help for anything that's like maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours.
And also I think Hyrox is one of those events where if one thing creeps in, like the cramp, or if you get a cramp or a stitch, you're fucked, you're ruined because you can't stop. And I did that to myself when I had a sip of Red Bull, stupid Red Bull, during the event. And I've been petrified to have a gel because I don't want it to cause that effect because it's just sugars essentially. But I also would like to see if it does give me any noticeable effect from the row onwards, because usually after that point I'm dead. Have you ever tried to gel for Hyrox?
Yeah, I did a gel in London just before, not because I felt like I needed it, but just because it was like my first race back. I was super nervous. London just gone.
Oh, amazing.
So really well.
Doubles?
Solo. So
yes, my man.
It's my first one back in a long time. I've just come back from a 18-month kind of hip tear. So it's like my first one back, and I've had quite a few setbacks on trying to come back. It was a nightmare. So I basically, on my first run back, I pulled my calf. I've never pulled a muscle before in my life. Pulled my calf, just literally on a really slow pace run on a treadmill.
It's always this. It's never something hardcore where you pull it.
It was just I pulled my calf and then I couldn't run for 2 weeks. I then started running, and then I think on the second run after that one, I pulled my other calf, and I was just like, I'm never going to be able to train again. So I was a bit nervous. So I took one, not because I was like, I need it, but I took it because I was kind of like, I want to be sure. I want to have everything covered.
Give you every edge you
Technically,
can.
I don't need this, but at the same time, I want to take it just because I don't want to look back and be like, oh, I've really struggled in the second half.
You would blame it
and
on
start,
that, wouldn't you?
start second guessing things. So I took it more to cover the bases, but I didn't need it.
I think that's the. What time do you end up with?
So I got 68 minutes,
Wow,
which I was aiming for.
That's quick.
I was aiming for 1:15. So
Yeah.
I was 7 minutes quicker than I expected. I was aiming for 4 minutes 30 per K. I was doing about 3:50, 3:55.
That's rapid.
Which is
so rapid.
Yeah, I was quite happy with that.
Yeah, that's really good.
I got to the point where I was on the third or fourth kind of interval, third or fourth K.
Yeah.
And I was convinced I'd missed a lap. I was like, there's no way I'm
the
doing
worst feeling,
3:45.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just did Stockholm, and I had an 8 a.m. race, which is
that's
7
hard.
a.m. UK time. And I'm one of those people who doesn't want to eat in the morning anyway. So I was like, and I was pretty nervous because I was like, I need to get 65 or less. And so, yeah, I did not have the appetite. So I waffed down a bagel at like 5:45, coffee. And but then you do have those thoughts of, oh, shall I have a pre-workout? Oh, shall I have a gel? Shall I? And you're like, most of the time, the best advice that I could give and accept is don't change anything on race day.
Yeah, I think you need to test everything you're doing in the same way that people do simulations to test their fitness and everything else. You have to test your race day nutrition.
Right.
And I don't know many people that do. So they'll turn up on the day, and even if they have had like certain pre-workout nutrition stuff, but you have to test it because a training, like for example for yourself, like doing it at basically 7 a.m, like you need, like in the lead up to that, it would have been a great idea for you to start training sessions at 7 a.m, maybe do a simulation at 7 a.m, and then practice, okay, well, I'm going to have this and this at these times and see how my body feels. And then at least you can go to the race
knowing,
and it's one less stress you need to worry about. You know that you can do it because you've done it before.
Yeah.
But most people don't do that. And that's where people tend to get caught out, and they are often.
They don't release the times for most things until like a couple of days before, right?
But you get a rough wave, so
you do.
Yeah, so you get a rough wave. Sometimes they're really unhelpful, and they might say between 12 and 8, and that's when it gets a bit difficult. But if you're on a morning one, if you're on a morning one, they typically will say like 8 to 12, and I always say in that situation maybe just plan for the worst. So I always practice around 8 because obviously 8 is harder to fuel than 12. And then at least you know, okay, well, I know I can do it at 8. Oh, it turns out I'm at 11:30. That means I've got time to have food at this point as well. So I'm going to add this one in. And yeah, you don't find out until 3 or 4 days before, maybe 7. But at least you've kind of prepped it around that time.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then going back to, well, not going back to, just with diet in general, is there anything you've noticed with, because you've obviously got plenty of clients now, have you noticed a common trait of people coming to you for a particular reason?
As in why they're reaching out?
Is there like a common thing that keeps popping up during your adventures into being gay?
Yeah, I find a lot of people struggle with like fueling around training. So in terms of like what to eat and when, or if they're training early, being able to eat that early as well. So a lot of people, if they're, because obviously we'd love to be full-time athletes, right? But most people who are doing Hyrox have 9 to 5 type jobs, or they're PTs and they're obviously training earlier and stuff like that. But so most people are training like 6, 7 a.m. and they'll just get up and just not eat, or they might have like a banana, for example, because they either don't feel they have enough time to eat, or they're worried that by eating something it might
feel sick.
Feel sick, lethargic, bloated, and stuff like that. So it's like fuel around training is a big one.
What would you say on that note? How far is a banana getting you in? Like, let's say I'm like today at Metabolics training. I'll outline it so people can get a rough idea of volume. It was essentially station cardio, but the cardio bit was 20 dumbbell thrusters and the dumbbell cleans into 20 reverse lunges into 20 thrusters with sort of 10 to 15 kilo dumbbell. Just a lot. It was taxing. So with an 800 meter row, then you do that, and you do the ski. Ended up being you get it done flat out 40 to 45 minutes. How far would a banana get you before you're sort of through those glycogen stores?
Yeah, not very far. Like, it's difficult to say an exact time
Yeah,
frame,
sorry,
because
it's
obviously,
a broad question.
but like the average banana has 23 grams of carbs, which is pretty much all sugar. Obviously, you've got to take into account the fact that your body's never at zero in terms of glycogen stores. You hold about 500 grams of carbohydrates in your body at any time through your muscles and your liver. But obviously, at the same time, very rarely are we at that 500 mark as well. We're usually somewhere in between, depending on the time of day and our typical diets. But in terms of if we're just like fully isolating that banana, like not very long at all, like 23 grams, you're going to burn it off so quick. So yeah, not very far at all.
So really, what is that's a good point to go on to, because bananas are like the go-to. People like have banana before you work out. Why are we recommended to have bananas before a workout if it's not going to make too much of a difference?
I think it's kind of that case of like something's better than nothing, right? If you're someone who struggles to eat, like people tend to say bananas because they're high in potassium, which obviously we know is an electrolyte, which gets lost not hugely through like sweat and stuff, but we do lose some.
Right.
It's pretty easy to eat. Most people don't mind eating bananas. And it's for the amount that it is, it's relatively carb dense if you compare it to other fruits and vegetables and stuff like that as well.
It's like a gel, nature's gel, isn't it?
Pretty much, yeah. So that's why everyone just typically just says go for a banana. But ultimately, you ideally do want more. But it's a case of if you're someone who's listening and you don't eat at all, and my biggest advice there would be to start something pretty small, like even starting with like a glass of fruit juice. Like 300 milliliters of fruit juice might give you, on average, say it's 300 milliliters, 30 grams, give or take.
Yeah.
It's not going to sit in your stomach really at all because it's purely liquid, gets absorbed super quickly. Maybe have that alongside a banana perhaps, then you're getting about 50-ish, and then start to build that up. Do that for like a week or so. Add something else in, maybe turn it into a smoothie, and you can start to build it up, because a lot of people forget as well that your digestive system is a muscle. In the same way you would, when you did your first Hyrox, you would have trained, you would have built up running distances, you would have done simulations, you would have trained your body to be able to withstand a Hyrox race. Whereas people don't do the same with our digestive system. They just say, okay, well, I need to start eating because Darryl said it on this random podcast. A very good podcast,
yeah, so he's got there first.
Darryl said I should be eating, so I'm going to go and have 70 grams of oats, a banana, honey, and then they feel full, they feel lethargic, they feel like they're going to throw up, and they're like, oh, well, my body can't do that, so I'm never going to do it again. And they go from 0 to 100.
So true. I can't tell you how many people who have dismissed meals, foods, things, and you'll sort of ask, what happened? And it's like, well, you clearly overate for what you eat. I know people who have like 300 calorie meals and they will have tried like a 800 and they'll be, well, yeah, it didn't sit well. Such a good point. Build up to these things.
Yeah, and all carbs are not the same as well. You have different types of carbs which release at different rates.
Yeah.
Like stuff like bananas and fruit typically will be digested a bit quicker than if you compared it to complex carbs like pasta and rice and oats to a certain degree as well. So you also need to look at, okay, what am I eating at which time slot in relation to training to be able to, one, top those stores up, but then also actually get them to where they need to be so they're not in the furnace.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of the things I've found is morning eating. I'm never hungry, so I've just accepted that because I don't want to really be getting up and smashing. Also, I find intermittent fasting in the morning, your brain's a lot clearer to focus on work. So I normally have black coffee 90 minutes after waking. As Andrew, you've been told me that. And then it's a smoothie. Because again, I'm not that hungry, but you can smash in the oats, blend it up with some peanut butter, the classic sort of protein smoothie. Yeah. And I think you were telling me last time I met up that it's just a fantastic way to get your calories in if you need to, is by making an oats-based smoothie or something.
Yeah, I do that as well. I sometimes, 3 or 4 times a week, I'll train at like 6, 7 a.m., 6:30, 7 a.m. Oof. And I'm waking up at 5 and I'm just getting up that early. I don't have any appetite. Yeah. I'm not going to sit there eating oats or anything like that. So I literally will make a smoothie the night before. So I don't have to worry about time because it's already there pre-made. And I literally just wake up. The first thing I do is start drinking the smoothie, and as I'm getting ready, I'm drinking it. And by the time I've got ready, the smoothie's gone. I leave the house.
And you've
By the
not
time-
smashed it all at once, which
yeah.
is, yeah.
By the time I get to the gym, it's been maybe 45 minutes, so I'm pretty good to go. It's not here. It's kind of getting where I need it to be, and then I have
Smash
a
a
relatively
session.
good session.
Yeah, he's a monster. I don't know why I looked at that camera. Yeah, that's really interesting. And then what about, well, actually, before we get to post, I think that seems to be the biggest thing is the education around being fueled for a workout. Because I genuinely believe, I know everyone has off days here and there, but I genuinely believe that if you're fueled and training properly, every session you will be a little bit, if not a lot better. It's not, for example, I was having this conversation with a friend the other day that progressive overload, you should actually, if everything is on point diet-wise and you're getting a surplus of calories, you're recovering properly, you will lift more the next session because the muscle is able to tolerate that stress load. But I think a lot of people, that's just my opinion, by the way, but a lot of people don't realise that if you're not fueled going to workout, it has every chance of being awful. What's your...
Yeah, it's crazy. I obviously I have a lot of people who, say, when I first start working, sometimes they fast before training and stuff like that, as I've already alluded to. But I had this one occurrence where I had someone who I was working with, and they didn't want to eat before their session because it was so early, and same kind of reasons. They were worried that they were going to feel lethargic, heavy. Their body always feels good, fasted. Yeah. They feel great. It's never been an issue before. So I was like, okay, do you know what? Perfect, fine. I'll tell you what, let's test it out. So I gave her I told her to, I didn't give her it actually, I told her to pick out a session that she was doing the following week, which was kind of like a long endurance-based session, which she picked out. And I was like, okay, perfect. Go do it. And she timed herself. And the next week I asked her to do the same session, but I gave her like some stuff to eat 45-ish minutes before, which was, I think it was pretty much like a banana and some juice. It was basically something which was roughly about 50 grams of carbohydrates. She was 5 minutes quicker. That's
a huge difference.
And obviously that you have to take into account the fact that doing something a second time, you obviously learn how to be quicker, right? So I can't just be like, oh yeah, food is the best. I'm the messiah of nutrition. But like, that would have definitely had part of the effect.
I'd hazard a bet
that
it would have.
I would say
100%. I think, if me and you have trained for years. If you think back to the best sessions, I guarantee they will have been fueled by big meals. Also, though, I want to give the other side. I often find that some of the best lifts will come from, this has got nothing to do with diet, will come from when, say, you've had a really shit night's sleep, or you just don't want to go to the gym. Something has got in your head that you're like, oh, I just don't want to go to the gym. And I sometimes find that sort of acceptance that the session is going to be shit puts your body into a weird sort of chill mode that means you go and smash it when you do it. Have you ever noticed that? Or is that just me?
Not necessarily on like a lack
not all the time, but
not on like a lack of sleep. But I do agree with what you're saying around if you take the pressure off, you can actually perform better. And I'd probably use the Hyrox session that I competed in a few weeks ago in London. Like I went into it and I was like, people were saying to me like, "What are you trying to get? Like, you're going to try and get a PB and stuff." I was just like, "Look, I don't actually care where I finished." Like secretly, deep down, I obviously did care. If I did it in like 7 days, I'd be really upset. But like, I was kind of like, I entered it in a frame of mind. I was like, look, ultimately, this isn't the race to be getting PBs. This is just all about hitting 430 per K and crossing the line pain-free. Because I was quite nervous about basically hurting myself. And that was all I cared about. Like when I was in the stations, I was literally when I got to the wall balls, I walked to my station bit where I was at. When I had the farmer's carries, I stopped twice. I was just so... Not because I needed to, but I was just like, look, all I want to do is enter this next run, not be gassed out. So I'm just going to take it nice and easy. So I probably lost like 3 or 4 minutes.
You got 68 still. So you would have been like 103.
I reckon 3-ish minutes. I reckon 105, 104 maybe. If I, like, even like on the rope pool, I walked to the other side and stuff like that. Like I was really casual in the stations because the pressure was off. Yeah. And because of that, my mind was so clear. It was the smoothest race I've ever had. Like nothing went wrong. I was getting blisters on the outside of my left foot, and I didn't even pay attention to it because I was just like, look, I'm feeling good. These runs feel smooth, and like it just went really well. And I have spoken to a lot of people who have said the same thing around lifting, like what you kind of just said around. I woke up, I had a terrible night's sleep, and they were like, but I've just hit a PB in this lift, or I've just hit a PB 5K. They were like, why is that, Darryl? And then on the opposite side of that, you hear a lot of people who do Hyrox races and they're like, I feel great. This is the one. And then one thing goes wrong and then their whole head goes and then they end up having the worst race they've ever had.
That's so true. And I think just to correct the point I made earlier, I think the sleep thing is probably normally not a bad night's sleep. It's that you woke up during a cycle or something.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think I've tend to have a disappointing Hyrox, and that's normally because I'm hard on myself. Like I got 115 the first one. I was horrendously ill before, but then the other ones
these are still strong times.
They're really strong as well, yeah. But the other ones, I felt so prepared. I was like, I'm good. I didn't understand how much you need to improve in your running to get really elite times, but they didn't go my way, and I was always disappointed finishing them. And I think part of that was exactly that. It's the putting so much pressure on getting a time, when actually it can be such a fun, awesome race. And this time in Sweden, I was like, I'm going to enjoy myself. I'm going for a time, but I really want to enjoy this. And it fucking, apart from the burpees, where I flack up all the time, heart rate just goes mental. It was a fun race. I smashed it, got the 105. And
great time.
Yeah, really, really happy. And you look at the ones where you put all that pressure. So my point there is, one of my friends recently who's never done Hyrox came to me and was like, so Ollie, I've seen you be doing Hyrox loads. What time should I be going for? And I was like, well, have you ever done one? He was like, no. I was like, don't. Like, why would you go into a race you've never done and go for a time? And also, what a waste of, what a way to disappoint yourself, because you're going to disappoint yourself. And I think Hunter, or I'm probably misquoting Galore today, someone said to me, the time you think you're going to get on your fast Hyrox, add 15 minutes. And I'm like, oh, yeah, every single person I know has got 15 minutes more.
Yeah, that's crazy. I've never heard that stat before, but it makes sense, right? Because a lot of people, they'll look at their simulations they're doing in the gym, and they'll be like, well, I'm doing this in an hour, so I must be an hour. But then obviously there's so much you need to take into account which you can't control, like how busy the track is.
Busy track is awful, isn't it?
Busy track. The rock zone, like it's hard to imitate a rock zone, and you've got other stuff which is completely out of your control as well. And
also arriving like an hour before, your adrenaline peaks immediately as you get into that arena. No matter unless you're the coolest cucumber around, you either get a spike of it from excitement or a spike of it from nerves. And that in itself, this is my trainer's, passing on my trainer's wisdom here, George. And he was like, just rock up when you can, just before. Don't bother coming in super early. What's your pre-Hyrox nutrition? So on the day, let's say you're racing at 12, what would you do?
So I raced at 1, so I can probably just talk about that.
Yes.
So on that race, I woke up at 7. And I think I had 3 crumpets and honey, which was unreal.
So good.
It's literally my favourite breakfast.
I love crumpets and honey.
It was so light. I think it worked out, because obviously I counted my calories on that day, and it worked out to be like almost like 100 grams of carbs. And it was like, amazing. Barely felt I'd even eaten anything. Yeah. I then had about 500 mils of water with electrolytes, spent an hour stretching.
An hour?
About an hour stretching, like casual stretching, just to kind of like loosen up a little bit.
Mobility more than stretching?
Mobility more than stretching. Just kind of like stayed, like I didn't turn up to the event until 11:30.
Yeah.
Just kind of like chilled around my house, did a little bit of work. I was eating pretty much every 2-ish hours. I think after about 2 hours later, I think I had something like a smoothie and maybe like a bagel or something.
Bagel's a good one.
Yeah, it was quite nice. Like peanut butter and jam bagel.
Yeah, perfect.
And then roughly around, I think I left at about 10:30 to get to the event. It took me like 45 minutes. This is really detailed.
We'll break it down with
did
some
my laces and did my top up.
what shoes?
But and then on the way to the event, I was having like honey in tortilla wraps.
Oh wow, so you went full like
proper carby. So I did honey in tortilla wraps. I was just eating those,
Amazing.
which is really good again because each wrap was about 40 grams of carbs. Wow. So really dense but super light on the stomach.
Yeah.
Got to the event. I then had like a Lucozade sports drink, like the energy drink, the non-fizzy one with these.
Oh, it's so nice, that one.
Yeah. It's good, right?
God. Yeah.
With like these, you get them from the supermarket there. I think they're called Yogos. They're like yogurt, fruit, twirly things.
Yes. Yeah.
They're like fruit winders, basically.
Yeah.
So I had like a couple of those whilst also eating like a couple of Squares bars.
Squares bars are my go-to.
The chocolate one are elite.
Oh, God.
And then I was kind of like spent about an hour doing some more mobility just in the warm-up section, played around with some of the stuff, like did some running, did some cycling.
Do you see people doing something that really makes me want to walk up? I don't do this anymore because I never want to be that guy, but walk up to people and go, stop it. Stop doing that. It's people doing heavy sleds in the warm-up area.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? All you're doing is fatiguing your muscles. You're doing nothing to benefit you. And then people doing like, what else is there? Silly things people do in the warm-ups. The wall balls, doing loads of wall balls. I'm like, just get on a rower, spike your heart rate, and then just on the bike. You really don't need much more, I believe.
Yeah. So I just basically I was like on the rower, the bike, did a bit of running.
Perfect.
I did like a few of the sleds, but it was like light, just not like the full.
Oh, that's awkward.
I hit a PB on the sleds. No, I did I basically played around with just the
grips,
like the grip, because like I find it hard with I've still not worked out my favorite position for the push,
because a lot of people do that one where they sort of wrap their arms. I find that a bit uncomfortable.
Because I tried to wrap my arms round and then lean into it, but then I find it doesn't feel that comfortable for me. So I was basically playing around with grips, how I wanted to try it, because I was basically going to try a grip that I'd done a couple of times in training, but not on obviously their sleds and stuff. So I wanted to try that out. Didn't work, so I went back to my old one.
Okay.
And then it was just like sipping electrolytes whilst getting ready for.
That's something I think a lot of people forget to do is the just smash electrolytes. Like, you can't have too many. Well, you could, but you can't have too many on the day. And I find it makes such a big difference to the race in that the cramps, and there's no chance of you cramp. Well, less chance. Yeah. And I just feel. Maybe it's because I run hot. I'm a very sweaty dude. I'll be pouring. And so if I'm not bang on the electrolytes, you can actually feel it in your mouth, the dehydration in the race, which happened in one of them. And you're fucked because you ain't getting that hydration back anytime soon.
Yeah, exactly. It's tough. And I didn't even stop once for any water throughout the whole race. I didn't need to. Which for me was obviously just saves time. From that side of things. So I felt like, as I said, I keep saying it, but like that race, I was quite lucky in terms of the race timing was perfect. Like 1 o'clock, I think it was, is spat bang in the middle. There's loads of time. It's not too late to get tired, like have a bit of a slump. And I felt like during that race it was the best I'd ever done in terms of like nutrition, hydration, and just the race itself.
Awesome.
It was pretty well. Yeah.
So you got any more booked?
So I booked Katowice, the one in Poland.
Nice. I was thinking of doing a one in Poland.
So I booked that one literally a few days ago because I was kind of like, I was hoping to do Glasgow, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to. I'm hoping to do Glasgow and maybe like London. Yeah. But I don't know if I've got the Glasgow ticket. So I was just like, I'm just going to book one so I know I've got something to aim for.
I think that's better because also the Glasgow, London, and Manchester, Birmingham, there's just no way any of us sort of nearly at the good phase of Hyrox people can get on the podium. Like, no chance. It's
very competitive.
It's so competitive. Like, you have mid-tier heats getting 54 minutes. These lads I was watching in Sweden on the doubles pro, they were fucking rapid. Like, I've never seen anything like it. They'd sprint off from each station, 54 minutes.
Solo?
No, doubles.
So when last time I did a doubles race, me and my partner, we did it in 56.
Ooh.
And that was like in Hamburg. We came 5th in the competition, which
that's rapid.
But like that was like, at the time, that was rapid. Whereas like,
still.
I think Dublin, I think the top times were like 50 to 52.
There was a 49 pulled by some duo, I think. I think that was the world record.
That was mental. Like, yeah, and the thing is, like, it wasn't like one or two people got like the 50, 52s. There was like a lot of people hitting those numbers.
It's crazy.
56 is like, now it's average. Like,
That's
it's like,
crazy.
it's a standard time. Whereas when we hit 56, as I said, like, we came third in our age group, fifth overall.
Yeah.
I think. The two guys in our age group who beat us, like, one of them won the world championships that year.
Do you know his name?
It was two guys. I think they're from Belgium. But they're like, I think they did it in like 52, 53. They were literally in our heat, and they were so quick at the time. But yeah, like they won the worlds that year. So that's how close we were to kind of like being good at Hyrox that year. But now, as I said, like 56 is kind of like
What puts it into perspective,
standards.
Hunter's record, 53 something. That's solo and pro.
Yeah.
I can't quite fathom how you could possibly do that. He's amazing.
Yeah. So 53 is for pro as well.
Do you think the top scorers are on there on PEDs?
It's hard to say, isn't it?
Tough one to say, right? Because it's not like bodybuilding where they're just like jacked as shit.
So hard. Like, I know a lot of people are convinced they are.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we are talking about a sport which is so early. So like the year-on-year improvements are going to be huge.
They're going to be massive.
Yeah, and you've got every year, like, for example, last year there was 150,000 competitors. This year we're hitting 450 they're aiming for, maybe 500. So every year you're getting 3 times the amount of people competing. And some people are coming from sports like AFL in Australia, Aussie Rules football. Some people are like cross-country skiing, and they're new to the sport. They've got that aerobic base. They're pretty strong. Naturally, they're going to come in and be doing pretty decent times.
So it really is about the aerobic base. All those stations, I believe, you can get good at in 6 months.
Yeah.
And if you've got the aerobic base, you're laughing.
Absolutely,
because all the runners, they just kill it.
Yeah.
There's a girl, a woman today, I was training with a metabolic. She was insane. She was so quick, and all her moves were like perfect form. And I was like, fuck, this girl's amazing. And then I met up with her after and was like, you're a weapon. And we started talking about Hyrox, and she was like, oh no, I won mine. I was like, that figures. Yeah, like, that's fair enough. And yeah, it's just it's an inspiring sport, isn't it? Because you see all these people just coming up. But I'd want to know. I've got a theory that people are on some of the stuff that the Tour de France riders would take, like that EPO.
Like EPOs and stuff.
Yeah. Do you know how that works?
I know it from like very top line. You basically inject blood into your system. Obviously, when you kind of like inject more blood in the system, you have more red blood cells. Obviously,
Is that EPO?
Yeah, I think so. And you have more oxygen going around the body. Is that not?
Yeah,
Am I talking about the wrong thing?
No, I think because I didn't know that was. I thought EPO was just something that affected oxygen, and I thought that was just a process. But it might, yeah, basically, there's got to be something that it just feels superhuman that they're able to. Because okay, I'll re-explain this. When you come off like this, the burpees, and you're like, oh, I've got to run to get Hunters. It's like 3:20.
Yeah,
that feels like an impossible thing, but obviously it's not. They've achieved it. These guys have pulled it.
Yeah, and obviously we are also talking about, like, we're talking about Hunter in particular, like we are talking
Or
about
Alex
someone,
Roderick.
Yeah, but he's so good because his wall balls are mental. Like, if you're going to beat him, you need to be about 4 minutes in front of him.
Does he just go unbroken?
Yeah, he's done unbroken wall balls for every single event I've ever seen him. So like, if he's doing unbroken and wall balls, he's doing them in like 4-ish minutes maybe.
Yeah.
So you probably need to be like 2, 3, 4 minutes in front of him when you get to those wall balls. Otherwise, he's just going to catch you up so quick.
It's actually mental to think 100 wall balls, 9 kilo after that race.
Yeah,
Unbroken.
yeah, it's mad. It's mad. It is only In some ways, you think, well, it's 9 kilos, but at the same time, it's 9 kilos at the end of the race.
Yeah.
And like, even like, I reckon doing 9 kilos fresh, like your shoulders would get tired.
Yeah, I remember. I think it says a lot to how much encouragement from external people has an impact on the race. Because in Sweden, I got in and I was like, oh my God, I might get my goal here because I really picked up the pace. Saw people coming in with 102 and was like, okay, I've got 3.5 minutes to get these done. And I was like 20 in, and wobbles can fall to shit. And I've been training them hard because I normally fall to bits. So I got through I was at 70, and then I just heard my mate go, 1 minute, and just this spark of, well, fuck it, we're going unbroken. And I managed to get the last 30 odd unbroken, and literally 105.01.
That's so good.
So it's like, but yeah, I just wonder how much better you have to get to be these guys' level.
Yeah, it's crazy. Hunter has always been good at this sort of sport. Even when he was 18, I think I've read or listened to him say something where he rocked up to his first Spartan race, never done it before, and I think he either won it or came third or something like that. Like, he is just naturally gifted.
Yeah, and when talent works hard, you're fucked.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? He's obviously very talented and gifted, but he also does train. And you speak to some of these athletes as well, and their dedication is immeasurable. Like Lucy Proctor, for example, who is
she's rapid,
weapon, right?
Shout out, Luce.
Absolute weapon. I was training with her yesterday.
Is she one of your clients?
Yeah, I work with her. So obviously I've got a working relation with her, and we trained together yesterday at Slevin, and you talk to her, and she's so dedicated and zoned in on every aspect of it, like the recovery, the different heart rate zones of training. Obviously, from a nutrition standpoint, I'll ask her to do something and she will literally just do it, no questions asked.
Wow.
She obviously likes to know the reasons why and stuff, but if you say, okay, well, we're going to do this because this is going to help you in this way, she'll just do it. And I think that is another element which people don't really think about, is just the dedication these guys put in to be at that level. And they give up a lot of sacrifices. They'll give up nights out with their friends, going out drinking, hooking up with boys or girls probably, and all this kind of stuff, which as young people, or even anyone really, that we tend to take for granted. They don't have that because they obviously have this one goal where they're so committed and motivated to do. They will give everything for it.
Yeah, it's like that, as George said. It's like they're not all there really, in the sense that they're so, as you say, locked in that nothing else really matters. And I think when you get to, because I'd say we're pretty similar in terms of our fitness level. We're definitely good at what we do. Not quite in that top tier. Would love to be. So when we look up at those people in the top tier, there is that internal monologue which will be like, I wonder if they're doing performance enhancing drugs, or well, they've probably got natural talent. But actually, and you've probably got to meet them as well. We met Hunter, we've met Lucy, we know all these people. They're actually fucking dialed in. They've got that extra bit. No matter how regimented I am, they will always be a little bit more. And I find that really inspiring.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also scary.
Yeah. But if you speak to Hunter, his self-belief is mental. I spoke at an event in the summer. He was speaking there as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, you were there, of course.
Yeah, that's right, mate.
Sorry, of course. And so you must have listened to his talk, and he talked about rowing for the Olympics.
Yeah.
And he watched the Olympics. He was like, yeah,
I can do that.
Yeah, I'm going to win it.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, I might give it a go. He's like, yeah, I'm going to win it. He obviously didn't get there or anything like that, but there was no doubt in his mind. He was like, yeah, I'll probably just go to the Olympics and not just go there, but I'll win the event. That's
what I mean. You kind of need that delusion, because I think that drives you to be successful. And if you don't get there, you will have got a lot further along than if you didn't have that delusion.
Yeah, absolutely right.
I think that's the same to relate it to what I do, business-wise. The hardest times I have is when I lose my self-belief, or you start to question your self-belief. But when you're in the happy phase and you're like, yes, you know what, I can fucking do this. You drive, obviously it makes sense. Of course you drive forward. Yeah. But losing that self-belief, or even just having it waver, it fucks you.
Yeah.
And so
you end up manifesting it, don't you? Both negative and positive. If you believe something's going to happen, you kind of then make that happen a lot of the time. It's crazy.
Yeah, I completely agree. Have now to finish off, any myths? Let's bust some social media rubbish. Are eggs bad for you?
Eggs? Hell no. They're like one of the best things you can eat.
Do you remember Game Changers, the documentary, said I know. He rolled his eyes. I couldn't agree more.
Where they were like, we cut out meat and we end up having like boners for longer in the night and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's like unicorn fucking wings and
yeah.
And they said eating, I think, one egg is the equivalent of smoking a cigarette on your lungs, on your heart. And I was like, that can't be real.
No, it's definitely not real.
Are all protein sources equal?
No. So like, if you, and I'm guessing like, no. So if you compare like plant and animal-based protein, animal-based is absorbed a lot quicker because it's got a higher leucine content. But that being said, you can still meet your requirements for a plant-based diet. I think kind of like that kind of message has been misconstrued quite a lot by people who obviously have certain agendas and stuff. And they'll say, oh, well, plant-based diet, you don't absorb it properly and therefore you can't you lose testosterone, all this kind of stuff. You just basically need to mix and match a little bit. Like having something like beans on toast, for example, creates a more complete protein source than if you just had beans by themselves and stuff like that.
Yeah, okay.
So as long as you have yes, plant-based protein sources are absorbed slower and it's less of that. But at the same time, as long as you're having a varied diet on a vegetarian or vegan-based diet, then you can definitely meet your needs. But in terms of are they the same? No, like animal-based animal-based meat does get absorbed quicker.
Yeah, I noticed when I was on Huel as my main, because I fully believe the message that you can live off this stuff, and you can. But if you want to be a top athlete, you cannot. Yeah, and I misconstrued those things. And when I was on it, I noticed my muscles looked less full. And then I moved back to making sure all my meals had proteinous meat. Yeah. Suddenly, the body changed within like a week. It looked fuller, and that might be glycogen source or something. But yeah, that's something I experienced.
Yeah, sure. Just to correct myself there, when I say quicker, I meant more gets absorbed. So say, for example, you had 100 grams of meat and 100 grams of just chickpeas, you would absorb more of that 100 grams if it was the meat as opposed to the chickpeas. So it doesn't necessarily get absorbed quicker. You just get more of that 100 grams. If that makes sense. Yeah,
it does. What about late night eating? Is that going to make people fat?
It's not going to make you fat, but at the same time, it's preferred to not eat 2 to 3 hours before bed, just because one, it can disrupt your sleep.
It does.
You hold a lot of melatonin in your gut, and obviously melatonin is a hormone which is released to bring your body down and enable you to go to sleep. If you're digesting food, then that melatonin doesn't necessarily get released. So
I didn't know that.
It does disrupt your sleep. It's not ideal to go to sleep on like a full stomach, just purely because you're obviously going into like a recovery mode. But at the same time, we know that weight gain and weight loss is not completely, but mainly down to calorie deficits. If you're eating less calories than your body needs, then technically you shouldn't put weight on. If you hit maintenance, wherever you're having it really early or really late, technically you shouldn't be putting weight on. It's not quite as simple as that, but that is the main kind of like consensus. I
think someone said the 3-2-1 rule. Let's see if I can butcher this. I think it was something like 3 hours before bed is when you should stop eating, 2 hours before bed is when you should stop drinking, and 1 hour before bed is
Technology?
Huh?
Technology, one?
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is it. And I find that rule, it's harder to do when you're trying to get all your calories in. What's a tip you would give for a busy person, which is pretty much everyone we know, trying to fuel properly? Because I think something I've realised since moving to a more performance-based training, as you have, is it's actually quite hard to get enough calories in, and you're obviously you're probably overtraining. We all probably are in London. So fueling that it's like super important, but it's hard to do, which is where I find little hacks like the chocolate milk, a full carton. It's not going to make you fat. You're training hard. It's fantastic. The sugars are going to help get into your body quickly. And smoothies. Is there anything else you found which is helpful?
In terms of
just helping you fuel in the time, because otherwise you're not. To say you're not eating every bloody 2 hours, because you need to get work done. So eating and cooking every 2 hours is,
of course,
it's a nightmare.
Yeah, absolutely. I think main tips really is like, firstly, like prepare. So like prepping your food ahead, or if you're someone who doesn't like to prepare food, then having foods which you can supermarkets are pretty much everywhere, right? So having Tesco's, like especially if you're in the city, you can definitely get to supermarkets. Having foods which you can quite easily grab on the go, and that's not talking about like your chicken wraps and stuff. But you go to Tesco, you can get like microwavable rice, like pre-cooked chicken, and then a bunch of salad which is already there ready to go, and you just put it together.
Yeah, it's
and
like
that
£7 for all that. Really.
Yeah, £7, which is actually less than if you was to buy like something from an actual kind of like takeaway restaurant sort of thing.
It's a good point, isn't it?
A lot of people will go to Tesco and they'll pick up like basically a meal deal, which is full of sodium, like full of salt, full of crap, like isn't nutrient dense. You're hungry 2 hours later, or even like half hour later, and then they just eat crap after that.
And do you believe I know it's illegal to put the wrong stats on, but when these sandwiches are saying like 34 grams of protein, I'm like,
yeah,
is it?
Well, yeah, I think if they're putting it on there, then
it has to be.
It should be there.
I don't trust society.
Yeah,
I think it's all bollocks. It's like protein bars. You've got some with like 25 in. You're like,
yes.
And they taste like I had Bear Bells, their Chocomel one. Do you remember that chocolate bar that used to be it's like a Mars bar, but it would be in a yellow package with red writing.
Yeah.
So they've copied that, and this thing is like crack. It's so good. It's genuinely. It doesn't even taste like a protein bar, and they're like, it's 20 grams of protein, and I'm like, how?
It's probably just like whey protein powder, though, isn't it? It must be.
They've clearly done it.
Yeah, it must be. It must be like whey it must be like whey protein, or maybe they've got like milk in there and stuff like that.
What about there's all these meal prep services. The first one I saw was Fresh Fitness Food. I keep seeing Simmer Eats with Simmy Dillon. Shout out, massive represent entrepreneur. And one I have actually been trying this week's Prepped, and I'm going to shout them out. Fuck me, they are amazing. Like today, I had harissa chicken and an orange chicken.
Very bougie.
Yeah, with like sweet new potatoes, and then another day was this smoked aubergine fucking chicken and couscous. They are incredible, and the macros are like 400 to 500 calories per meal. They taste good. This is the first ones I've found, because chicken normally when you reheat doesn't taste very nice, or when it's cold it's a bit shit. These cold are amazing.
Really?
And I'm like, holy shit, these guys have actually ticked the box, because they're not unhealthy. They're delicious. You can take them anywhere. I've been eating them on the go. So I'm like, these sound like the best solution. If you want to be the best, you've got to invest in them.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I'll be honest, I've never actually used meal prep companies or anything like that, so my knowledge of them is a bit scarce. But yeah, if you're like a busy professional, and they can be really helpful, just because obviously you basically get it delivered to your door, and it's usually like, I don't know about Prepped and Simmer, but like Fresh Fitness Foods deliver it I think twice a week. They'll give you like 2 to 3 days in advance, so it's all pretty fresh.
I'll see if I'll chat to the Prepped people. I reckon they'll send you like at least a week, because that'd be cool to have a nutritionist rate their meals. Because I'm honestly like, I think they're obviously all these meal things are going to cost more than your average, but in terms of hitting macros, and leads me on to a good point actually. The gut is all the rage. There's the bloody Zoe's, fuck you, Stephen Butler. There's the kefir drinks, the probiotics are huge now. BioCult, they clearly made a fortune because they're fucking everywhere. And there's so much evidence showing you that the gut plays a huge part in your well-being, obviously your well-being, but your mental well-being.
Yeah, huge.
What's your, have you got any wisdom or any knowledge to pass on that?
Yeah, so I when I first studied my sports nutrition masters, I wanted to go into gut health.
Really?
So my master's degree dissertation was on like gut bacteria and sports
Glad we pulled this up then. Yes.
Yeah, so I was like really into it, but it's so important for so many different reasons. Like they describe it as like the second brain.
Yeah. It's connected, isn't it? Directly by the vagus nerve.
Yeah, exactly. So it's so important, and
I'm like, I know something.
But yeah, it's so important. Not necessarily just from like an immunity standpoint, but yeah, as you said, like they've done so many tests, and like the tests on gut bacteria is still quite new. It's still quite novel, but like all the stuff that they've done shows that like greater kind of diversity of your gut bacteria and composition, so the amount of it does show that people live longer, they are happier, they move a lot better. I personally do think it can help sports performance. When I did my research, it was that typical, oh, it could do, but there's not enough research to suggest it. But I think it can help with sports performance as well.
I absolutely agree.
So like, I think it's one of those things that more and more people are starting to pay attention to it. And obviously, like places like Zoe helps and a lot of other people who talk about it. But yeah, it's so important. But
Is there anything? Sorry, go on.
I was going to say the problem we have is obviously a lot of people going back to the whole kind of modern day diet where people work in office and they reach like your kind of like meal deal type foods. They're not getting enough fiber, they're not getting enough fruit and vegetables, they're not getting enough plant-based foods, and therefore their gut probably isn't in the healthiest place. And that's where we get IBS, digestion issues. Some people have even linked stuff like acne, and you already talked about anxiety and mood swings and stuff like that, but people linked that to skin problems to your gut as well. Obviously, I don't know too much about that, but from what I've read and what I've listened, like there are links there.
Yeah, from what I'm seeing and from what I've experienced, I would say when you start looking after your gut, you see pretty quick benefits. I think sleep for me was one I noticed got really good. But I think it's also one of those things where you actually might not notice it until you look back. Because I think there's a lot of the changes are quite long-term things. Are there any things you recommend for improving gut health?
Yeah, I think firstly you should be aiming for a minimum of 30 different types of plant-based foods a week, which most people don't get. And just to kind of like define what that means, so like tea, coffee counts, obviously fruits, vegetables, different types of seeds counts, nuts, anything which is essentially plant-based counts as one of those portions. So just aim for that. Obviously easily having 5 portions of fruit and veg, but that's the absolute minimum. Like we shouldn't be hitting 5 and be like high-fiving each other. Like ideally we should be hitting 8 to 10 plus a day, but obviously people aren't. So like the easiest way I would be saying is like 30 different types of fruit and vegetables per week, so you're getting that variety, that whole taste of rainbow. Try and get different like colors into your diet as well. Obviously you could look at like probiotics and stuff like that as well. They can help, depending on the brand. But then also you've got stuff like your fermented foods like kefir. Sauerkraut, stuff like that can potentially help also.
Kefir's blown up recently because it tastes like shit, but yeah, it's selling. It's really selling. I think what was the one I tried the other day? There was a kefir gold chocolate one. And I was like, this is going to be delicious. It wasn't, but
it's basically like got off milk, isn't it, pretty much. So it's a bit sour. Do you know what? I actually don't mind it, but I can see like most people don't like it because obviously it is like sour milk.
I'm agree. I don't mind it. It's not like delicious, but I'm never like ugh. What about well, that's why I pulled you up. So on this is what I noticed preps do really well is the foods. It's like a chicken, harissa chicken with aubergine and peppers and this and that, and there's probably about 8 to 10 in each meal. And I was thinking that's really interesting. I'd love to test that long term to see, because my diet's been on point for months now. I haven't drank, I don't smoke. I'm like all in for this 16-week thing. So it'd be interesting to see this increase in varieties of food. Does it have an effect I notice? Because eating healthy, it can be quite easy to go chicken, rice and vegetables every day. So having these meals, you're like, oh shit, I'm getting tomatoes, aubergine, seeds, pep spices, coffee. And I'm intrigued to see how much of an impact that has. Because it's got to be good for the gut, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, it definitely will.
Anything else for the gut?
Like the only other thing I'd say for the gut is like your gut is constantly changing day to day, and it's not just food, it's also like stress levels and stuff like that. So I'd say like if you want to increase your gut health, doing mindfulness stuff will really help as well, which is another thing which people don't think about. So like, say example, you're in a really high pressure job, you're training a lot as well, like taking 10 to 20 minutes out to do either yoga or meditation will actually help your gut health.
Amazing.
You've got some really cool apps like Headspace. Headspace is great. Like I used to do 20 minutes of meditation every morning when I woke up.
Why'd you stop? I'm interested.
I just got out of the habit. I actually really want to get back into it.
Try Breathe with Sandy on YouTube or Breathe Central, because I was the same. When I get on a rhythm with that headspace, I'm like, great.
Yeah.
But as soon as you knock it, you're like, oh, I can't be bothered to get back on that.
Yeah.
But these ones, so Breathe with Sandy, he has so many different videos. One will be for sleep, one will be for energy. So you get this variety of breathing techniques and you can figure out which one you like. And then Breathe Central has just got beautiful water sounds, and it will be either 5 rounds of 50 or 4 rounds of 30. And I find that is a really great way to meditate, and you stimulate the vagus nerve directly.
Nice. Yeah, I'll give it a go. Yeah, I want to get back into it because it's so good. Like, I was speaking to someone who was a lot more informed than I was around that, and they were saying that, like, your frontal cortex.
Prefrontal cortex, right.
Was like people who do meditation regularly, that
Yes.
frontal cortex is so much more developed, which obviously is so good for like life longevity. And I was like, as soon as they told me that, I was sold. Yeah, I was like, okay.
And I guess the scrolling does the opposite.
Yeah, exactly right.
Interesting. Okay, I'm going to do that. Well, that was great, mate. I love that.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
Amazing.
That was awesome. Mate, I learned so much from that.
Yeah, it was really fun.
It's so good. That's why I really want to have you on, because I know you've got such an in-depth knowledge of